Welcome to Capital Region BOCES Communications Service. The need for school communications has only existed for 30 years. Prior to 1988, school was more likely to be canceled by the Cold War than it was cold temperatures. This is what an FAQ looked like. This is what graphic design looked like. This is what a budget newsletter looked like. This is what athletes looked like. This is what acceptable Halloween costumes looked like. And this is what professional development looked like. But the BOCES office didn't look the way it looks now.
We were over at British American Boulevard.
Which was a warehouse. I don't know if you've heard about this, but it was a warehouse. It was a hole in the wall.
No windows anywhere in the building. There were no walls. There were 4 or 5 desks in a room. We had no storage area. When we bought a new computer and we got the computer boxes, what do you do with empty boxes? Because we were afraid that if something went wrong with the computer, how do we send them back? And we used to have John stand on a chair and he would put the boxes up high in the ceiling.
Storage space and a nice office weren't the only things that the communications service was lacking. They were lacking equipment, they were lacking people, and they were lacking technology.
I started at the dawn of the desktop publishing revolution, and Aldis Corp had just introduced this fascinating software program called PageMaker.
The very first thing I worked on was the Waterloo calendar, and again it was in PageMaker, so it was one of the theme calendars, which we really didn't do back then.
I had been a newspaper reporter for the Gazette for 4 years, and one of the folks I covered was Mahonison and Debbie Bush. So I kind of found out about the job, as I recall, through Debbie.
She said if we could get these 2 other districts, you're in. We could afford to have a graphic designer and staff.
And she's called me up and said, hey, wanna do some freelance work? I did the BOCES calendar and I did a bunch of other calendars.
I had 1 semester of PageMaker.
One of the earliest memories I have was, and this was called professional development in the old days, was Judy Cox had her daughter train me how to use PageMaker.
Judy was like, oh, I have this, I'm envisioning this position where a junior designer will go from school to school with their SE30.
They were essentially prehistoric laptops that were about the size and weight of a college dorm room refrigerator. Put them in these carrying packs on our shoulders and run around with them like it was a normal thing.
One of the superintendents, I went into his office and met him, and he asked me if it was my lunch bag.
The joy of completing a project was shared by everyone. Seen here, John Netzel finished his first newsletter and ran home to proudly display it on his fridge. He also proudly displayed his fridge. With so little technology and experience among the team, achieving a perfect design piece was a minor miracle.
Everything was primitive.
I used to have to do everything on a typewriter.
There was no email, no World Wide Web, no school websites to manage.
Tab key, tab key.
No PowerPoints, no smartphones, no social media.
And you had to do them on carbon paper. Copy rooms, there was no such thing.
I had a computer at home, so I brought that. We needed the software and this will be on tape, but I took it from my previous employer.
So we had to use black and white film, and we'd spend all of our time driving up and down the Northway or I-90 to drop off film. Then we'd have to drive back and look at the contact sheets and see through these little loops if there was anything that was worthwhile.
On my little SE30 with the monitor about this big, we had to design everything in black and white. So anything you wanted to be a different color had to be a separate file in black and white.
And we'd have to actually size them all by hand using these little gems from the BOCES Museum.
Nobody had a cell phone, so we had to get recordings on tell people to call the office, give them our extension, then return to the building to get our messages and call back.
No Google, no e-newsletters, mobile apps.
If the printer didn't work, you were the tech guy. If the computer didn't work, you were the one that had to figure out everything.
It was a team meeting, I think. Yeah, I'm sure it was a team meeting when Judy was talking about the internet and Bob Hanlon tried to tell us, oh, that's just a fad, it will never last.
I don't think I was there when he actually said it, but I remember hearing that he was like, oh, it's just a fad, it's not gonna last, we're getting all worked up over nothing.
I think that's right when we got email. We went from voicemail to email.
You know, I don't know, did we agree with him? Didn't we? I don't know, but he was bound and determined that it wasn't gonna last.
Okay, so I'm old school, as you can imagine.
It kind of makes me wonder what we did with all of our time in those days.
It wasn't difficult to find out where all the time went. According to these photographs, it was spent at parties.
The parties were pretty good. The parties were awesome.
We had a lot of fun. We were known as the party program area.
Like in the early days, we would have like baby showers at people's houses. We would have Christmas parties at people's houses.
We went to Judy Cox's home in Lake George, and that was our retreat. And her husband, who's British, had a beer keg in his fridge in the basement.
Judy Cox's house, John's house, Kelly's, Bonnie's.
We would dress up all the time. Darlene was still the social secretary back in those days.
We did cookies and milk, crayons.
My favorite was when we all dressed up as Sharpie markers. It was right after like 26 of us had to take and pass and be reachable on these lists.
This particular party, I was Denise and Mary Jill went out the night before, and I didn't get to go out with them the night before. So I was all psyched to party this night, and these two were hungover like you couldn't believe.